I just want to welcome everybody here in person at the beautiful Spaceport Cornwall and online who are joining us remotely. It's been a really exciting day and an exciting couple of weeks for us at VirginOrbit. So thank you for making the trek out here or joining virtually. We're happy to share this launch with all of you. And especially today to talk to you about what we're looking at. So just a real quick logistical note. Like I said, we are hosting some people in person as well as online. So we're going to do a little bit of a back and forth flow where we're going to first answer some questions in person, and then we'll probably go to the virtual room to make sure we're giving some time to those people. So as we get started, I just wanted to say we at VirginOrbit, as you know, we're now in the final preparation for our next launch, and it's called Start Me Up. The launch will carry 9 satellites for an international pool of space innovators, the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office, UK Defense and Science and Technology Laboratory, Satellite Applications Catapult, Horizon Technology, the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, Raya Group, Space Forge, Sat Revolution, and the Sultanate of Oman are all riding aboard our flight this week. So to learn more about each mission and customer, you can have a look at the press kit that was sent out to you. We're also delighted to help you connect with our customers to learn more about their individual spacecraft. So if you have any specific spacecraft questions, feel free to connect with one of us from the media team, and we'll put you in touch with the right people. A little bit more about the mission. So the launch service was acquired by the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, from the VirginOrbit National Systems subsidiary of VirginOrbit. It's also, as you guys know, a very special launch for us because it's the first international launch for VirginOrbit. It's also the first ever orbital launch attempt from the United Kingdom, or indeed anywhere else in Western Europe. Our panelists today can tell you all about the incredible collaboration and effort that made that possible, and also about what it means for Cornwall and for the UK. A little bit about how the launch actually works before we go into the Q&A period. So Launcher 1 is a 2-stage rocket. It's mated to a customized, upcycled 747 that we call Cosmic Girl. It's going to depart from a runway just like any other normal plane. It'll head out to its designated drop point and release the rocket about an hour after that takeoff. A few seconds after release, Launcher 1 will ignite its main rocket engine and begin its boost towards space. It will be in space for a few minutes later, but the mission will continue until the vehicle has reached its final orbit and deployed all of its payloads about an hour or so after release. As I mentioned previously, we're currently in our final pre-launch preparations focused on closely monitoring the health of the system and our payloads as we get everything ready for flight. Our engineers are pouring through the data and verifying everything as we'd like it to be. Assuming that everything continues to look good, we're currently tracking well for launch tomorrow, which should see a takeoff time somewhere around 9:40 p.m. Local, and until maybe 11 p.m. local time, with the rocket drop approximately an hour after that takeoff. That said, as is standard for space launch, and as you guys have already learned, mission success is our first priority, and if we need to adjust any part of that schedule, we will. We have good windows later this week and next week. For following along with launch, we are live streaming. We're also live tweeting the flight in addition to hosting many of you here at beautiful Spaceport Cornwall. So with that, pleased to introduce our panelists, Ian Annette from the UKSA, Dan Hart from VirginOrbit, and Melissa Thorpe from Spaceport Cornwall. And with that, we have about 45 minutes for Q&A, both virtual and in person. So I am going to start here in person. So with that, who shall ask the first question? Oh, just a second. Someone's going to bring a mic to you so you can hear you.
Victoria, go ahead and this is Spotlight. This will be a historic moment for Cornwall. What relevance will this have for people sitting at home with a cup of tea just down the road in their homes?
I think what we've seen over the last 8 years is this building of excitement towards something very aspirational and different for Cornwall. Something that started off as a project that not a lot of people really believed it was ever going to happen. And we've just really pushed so hard as a team to get to the point that we are today, working with our friends and family at Virgin at the UK Space Agency. And I think they've seen a small team here in Cornwall that live and breathe this county deliver something quite incredible. And so I hope that when they're sitting at home, they feel a bit of inspiration or aspiration and feel proud of how we're representing Cornwall going to the stars. I think there's a lot of doom and gloom out there at the moment, and something like this where you're feeling this excitement, you see all the school children excited about it, you see nanas and grandfathers excited about it, it kind of crosses all generations. And so I really think that people sitting at home, it's just something exciting, it's something different, it's something you don't see every day somewhere like Cornwall. And it's a bit of an underdog story as well, and I think people love an underdog story, especially in the UK. So I really hope that that's what people feel when they're watching it now.
Dan, can you explain the concept of a launch window? What governs its start and finish, and what can go wrong at this stage? You know, it's blowing a hoolie outside, but what conditions can this cosmic girl actually take off in?
Sure. Well, I mean, a launch window is the culmination of all of the input that dictate when a rocket can fly. So it has to do with when the payloads are ready, when the rocket and the rocket system is ready, when the regulatory framework is in place, and the coordination of airspace and across all the parties. And so that's what really dictates the launch window. Our launch window opens tomorrow night with a number of opportunities over the next couple of weeks. We're always geared towards and focused on the beginning of the window, which is why we're here today. But we will be looking very carefully at the readiness of the system as we process forward. Right now, everything is green. The rocket was armed yesterday, and we'll be loading fuel later today. So we're in full motion right now, gearing toward the launch tomorrow. That said, if we see anything interesting that we want to stop and pause and look at relative to the system health, if winds or precipitation or lightning or something like that is in the area, we will look very closely. We're going to proceed cautiously on this flight. We're in different airspace than we've flown before. Our pilots are ready, but we want to make sure we give them every opportunity for a successful mission. Sure. I mean, the airplane is a very robust airplane. It's a 747. We do keep an eye on crosswinds because we have a rocket under wing. And then, although we certainly have the ability to fly above the clouds, and we do our launch above the clouds, we want to make sure that things like triggered lightning or other items are not in a possibility. And so we do stay very close to the Met Office, and we've gotten some very good support from the local Met Office here. Highly appreciated that, so thanks.
Jordan Wright, the Angry Astronaut. I had watched Cosmic Girl land in October. I think you guys were hoping to launch in November, and clearly that hasn't happened. And I'm curious, given the delays, regardless of what may have caused them, has that impacted your future plans of launching from the United Kingdom?
We knew this was not going to be a piece of cake when we took on this opportunity. We worked very closely with the UK Space Agency, the CIA, Spaceport Cornwall, as well as the international community for airspace. I think we've all learned a lot in doing that. I think like any the first time you do it is difficult. The second time you already know, and can anticipate. And so the short answer is we're excited to be here today. We're excited about the future. And coming back, maybe as soon as later this year, to launch again and hopefully get a rhythm going. We want to be a part of the fabric of the space community here in the UK as well as globally. That's our objective as a company, and I think there's great opportunity.
I'd like to add to that as well, and I'm sure you know, Jordan, as well. When you look at programs like SLS and NASA, which has had a number of delays, of course, until it's got to its first launch, and similarly with the likes of ABL, who are another partner we're working with for Scottish launches, and they're waiting for their first flight as well, because it's difficult, right? So it's important to make sure that we get to a safe, successful launch rather than rushing towards failure. And in terms of does it impact on subsequent launches here for the UK, I would say absolutely not. Our role here, of course, is to create a commercially sustainable launch capability. But also, it's ensuring that we step through the regulations that we've put in place through primary legislation. There are inevitably things that we are learning from that as well as we go along. And take that at the right pace in order to make sure that it can be successful, it can build confidence across the sector, and then people want to come back and launch from the UK and they see it as a good place to do business, as well as, of course, being inspired by the event itself.
Felix,
US country. I just wanted to ask, this journey in Cornwall started all back in 2014. That was when the idea first came about. We're now at the precipice of the first launch here from the site. How are you feeling right now? Like, are there butterflies in your stomachs? Like, kind of what's the emotions going through right now?
I don't know about you guys. I feel really focused, actually. I thought I'd feel nervous or maybe anxious, but I don't. I think, and that's just because of the incredible teams that we all have around us. There are a lot of them in this room and across the runway, and they have just absolutely smashed it so that we can go on and do our jobs and feel really confident. So I feel confident and I feel focused and I feel ready to handle whatever comes our way. I just feel so excited. I feel like seeing yesterday, people getting excited in the public. Like, I cannot wait for the UK to kind of join that exclusive launch club, because it's going to feel good.
I just pile on. I always think about my team. They came back just after Christmas, cutting their holiday short so they could get through a wet dress rehearsal this past week. And so I'm always thinking about how are they doing. And I'll say the spirits are incredibly high. And I really attribute that to, certainly any space launch is exciting, and it's exciting to be a part of. But I think the connection to the community here, to the businesses here, and the working relationships and the mutual excitement about doing the first launch is really having a mark on my team. And, I'm frankly very appreciative of the community here for giving us that.
I think I'd say immense excitement. Who would not be excited by the fact that this is the first time that it's been done in Europe? And it's because it's hard, right? And we managed to crack all of those problems. But there is a point when the training takes over. And as Mel said, we kind of fall into that rhythm of teams know what they need to do. They know when they need to make the decisions they need to make. And that's good, right? We want to make sure that you don't operate outside that sphere. But immense excitement, for sure. And I'd say that the real achievements here are not the successes that necessarily you can see. It's about all the challenges that collectively as a team had to overcome. And a lot of it you don't see, whether it's dealing with international partners, whether it's dealing with different government departments and bringing them together in a coherent fashion. That has really marked an immense amount of effort. And of course, the culmination of all of that is these exciting missions into space as well. It's the things that are a lot of really nice story.
Hi, it's Parsley from the Iron Paper. How long, once it's in the air, do you know the mission's been successful?
And what are you most concerned could go wrong once it's occupied?
Well, let's see, the mission will take a little bit over an hour after we leave the airport to get into position for releasing the rocket. And after that, it's on the order of 50 to 60 minutes before we have released satellites and gotten the data back on the orbital performance. So it sounds it'll be quick. As we're watching ourselves fly. We'll do a 3-minute burn on the first stage, followed by about 6 minutes of second stage burn. We'll coast around Antarctica, come up around near Australia, and then we'll watch the final burn and it's deployed. Any space flight, everything needs to go right, and that's what we're about.
In terms of the accessibility of the horizontal launch system, how easily can it be expanded to other airports in the UK? Are there plans to do this, and what challenges are associated with it?
There are around 7 other spaceports that, of course, have been identified in the UK and vertical and horizontal launch. The likes of, for example, Snowdonia as well, and Glasgow Prestwick and other horizontal launch sites. And they're very much in the stages of development, of course, and either with their own regional governments or indeed as private entities. So the opportunities are there. Of course, you've got to see to ensure that there's a market there that can support it. But what I would say, of course, is always if you're first to market, if you're there first doing it, then you almost create an anchor type opportunity as well. So, the spaceport here, it's got its license. It'll demonstrate that it's been operating as a spaceport as well. So that's a real gem that Cornwall have got, of course.
Hi, Vicky from the Daily Mail. I just wanted to ask if you see space tourism operating out of Cornwall at any point. I also wondered if there's anything personal on board that anybody's taking, anything Cornish, tin, pasties, I don't know.
Yes, we're pretty much focused 100% on satellite launch at the moment. That's challenging as it is, before you add humans to that mix. But the future of more crewed spaceflight in the future is changing. The technologies are changing. We've announced an MOU with Sierra Space, for instance, which is as a return landing site, which may have people on board that in the future as well. The Cornwall Council has always said we'll have to have another look at it if we do start to look at human spaceflight. As a spaceport, we're really interested in human spaceflight and the opportunities with researchers going up for microgravity experiments, for instance. But also, of course, there's a lot going on in the tourism side of it as well, and putting some of these more humans into space to see the curvature of the Earth and what they come back down and do when they get back after that, being influenced by that overview effect. So I think we'll start to look at the opportunities in that, but 100% focused on satellite launch at the moment.
I'd add to that as well, certainly focusing on the human spaceflight element of it rather than space tourism, of course. There's no policy requirement for space tourism within the UK at the moment, but of course, from a human spaceflight perspective, we'll have to see what the future holds. In terms of personalisation, then I would just add, of course, one of the important parts about this programme is the inspiration that it provides. And as part of that, we've had a number of competitions that have been run, one of which was for youngsters to have a lift-off logo competition, which a young chap from Princeton won. And, the prize for winning that was to have his logo inside the fairing of this launch as well. So, young Callum from Princeton, age 6, I'm sure will be very excited to see his logo that represents the values of this mission actually going up into space. And that's just an example of how we should be thinking about inspiring that younger generation to get into this sector.
And if I could pile on a little bit to that, through COVID, we were working together, and virtually, I think we've had about 10,000 students in our factory with our engineers talking about space and rockets and how they fly. And so we've actually touched quite a bit of the community already. And I do want to bring us back to the inspiring satellites, because that's what this mission is all about. Manufacturing in space, different ways of using GPS and navigation, different technologies for satellites, understanding maritime behaviors and illegal fishing and piracy and things like that. I think in the world that we're in, as well as the important allied collaboration from the national security community, I think we can all personally connect with one or more of the satellites that are flying on this mission.
Hi, Felix Gatfield with the Felix Spacetime Educational YouTube channel. What educational opportunities will Spaceport Cornwall present to young people who have an interest in aerospace in the short term and the long term?
Hi Felix, thanks for that. Well, you're here, and that's fantastic. And this is what it's all about, and I've said this many times, the reason my whole team get up every single morning is to inspire the next generation. That's what we all should be trying to do, to get not just into the space industry, but STEM in general. And Launch Inspires is actually really easy to go into a school and get kids excited about space launch. The hard bit is then showing them the pathways into the industry. So my team have been working incredibly hard on developing partnerships with local colleges and universities. We've actually set up institutes and built facilities already so that people go intro can become, start to work on satellites in college. Working with University of Exeter, we've written modules on things like space economics. So starting to think outside the box. It's not just about the aerospace engineering side of it anymore. You can bring in like insurance and law and the humanities. And so for us, it's just important that we kind of show the breadth of the industry and all the different things that can be possible, including the arts as well. So just trying to break down some of those perceptions of the space industry is something we're proud of. But really the big thing is getting people up on site and showing them. We've done a lot of that massive rocket behind you there, that is the replica rocket that was built by the UK Space Agency. We've had thousands of kids already come up and see that, and we talked through that. So having something physical really helps, and I think after the launch we have a lot of plans to take tours through the integration facility and just get kids living and breathing what's on their doorstep for the first time. So lots planned. We've been working with Disney, for instance. We've got a young space crew that will be following along the launch tomorrow. So there's just so many. It's kind of endless, but it's the best bit of the job, definitely.
Thank you. It's great to hear you spell STEM with an A. My name is Nick. I'm just a dad for an organisation called STEAMCO. I'm on a mission to inspire 1 million kids to aim higher than my hive is. You are very inspiring people. You're obviously very successful. You're up there and I'm down here. I wonder if you could all think back to when you were young. That moment, that spark you had, that teacher, that place, that thing you did that brought you here today, that inspired your journey. Because I think that's what we're going to find and encourage other people to find.
Well, let's see. I mean, my spark, I guess, was the summer of 1969. And my parents made me stay out late. I was in New York. And watch a grainy picture of two men come off of a contraption onto the lunar surface. And it made me realize that what the possibilities are, that there was a tremendous amount of hope and goodness in being able to operate in moving humankind into space. That just has carried me into a community of an incredible community of innovation and terrific people who are all striving for the same ideals, and that's a very powerful force. And I would say that for the community here, having spent time in Cape Canaveral and other launch sites, there's something about knowing that somebody down the block is working on a spaceflight mission that sort of breaks the barrier down and makes it go from being something that's very far away to being something that is around the corner and something that a child would say, you know, I can do that.
Never did I ever think that I would be sat on this stage or indeed, you know, running this program as the senior responsible owner. I kind of go back to, do you remember, even though I've got more grey hair than Dan, I certainly remember 1969 as a very, very young baby. But I think if I go back to August, September 1977, was when Elvis was dying. But at the same time, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 were being launched, and they're still continuing out on their journey beyond the Earth sphere, which is the final kind of constraints of the galaxy. And I remember that very much as a child, and giving me that spark about wanting to be involved with physics and engineering. And that, I think, is probably where the journey has started. I mean, I've never been one for planning where I'll be next, but that, I think, was very much the start for me. I've been very lucky. I've worked very hard to improve my engineering skills, and I think that was very much the start of the journey. I'd probably take it back to August and September 1977 and started Voyager 1 and 2.
I think for me, it's slightly different. I grew up in a very, very remote part of British Columbia, Canada, and for me, I think the spark was the night sky. I was so fortunate enough to grow up with the Northern Lights quite frequently in the winter, and so for me, I guess it was more a spark of wonder. What is out there? What are humans going to do out there? What are we going to see out there? What are we going to find out there? And I unfortunately had a teacher that told me, when I said I was interested in astronomy, that there was no future in that where I was, so think about doing something else. Here I am. But it took me a little bit longer than it probably should have, and I think that's kind of set the tone for my mission, is to never let a teacher say that to children, to show that absolutely you can do something like this on your doorstep, especially girls. I have 2 daughters myself, and I see, you know, how they're treated sometimes very differently, and that's not okay. So for me, it's really important that, you know, as the head of the spaceport, that I'm in schools and I'm talking to girls and working with programs like Tech Girls to get girls excited about STEAM and excited about entering the industry of space as well. So it's been a bit of a journey for me. I never expected to be sat, you know, doing this, but I'm so immensely proud of what I have achieved. Thanks.
Hi, Kate Duffy from Business Insider. Obviously, this is such a significant launch. Where does this launch put the UK in the space industry? Where does it place it?
So, if you look at, I mean, the space industry is worth around about £16.5 billion annually to the UK economy. It's 47,000 people, and that's growing. And we are absolutely fantastic at designing satellites and building satellites. You know, I always use the heuristic that we build more satellites here in the UK than anywhere outside of the US. And we're also great at operating satellites as well as exploiting the data, which is a really, really important end of it as well. So we're kind of on a journey, and this helps us with that journey and fills that, what I call that end-to-end capabilities, and you can do everything within that. We are the 4th largest spender in the European Space Agency, and we've increased our commitment to over £1.85 billion to the European Space Agency. And we work very closely, of course, with our European Space Agency and also bilaterally with other countries and such organisations as NASA. So the UK is kind of as respected as a proven space nation. And if you look at some of those missions that have been launched recently, whether it be the Mars Perseverance, which had UK technology on it, or whether you look at the James Webb Space Telescope, whose mid-infrared instrument was actually pressed by the UK, and the principal investigator for that was from the UK. So the UK is very respected in space, and this again continues to reinforce that and allows us to grow so we can achieve being that science superpower as well as contributing towards the economy and inspiring the next generation of people who come ultimately to take over from the likes of us.
Okay, we're going to pause in-person questions for a second so we can take a few from our online joiners. So I'm going to start off thinking back to where we are right now at Spaceport Cornwall, at Airport Newquay, what are the main challenges of turning an airport into a spaceport is the first part of that question. And then maybe for Deanne specifically, does VirginOrbit have other launch locations in sight elsewhere in the world? And what are the lessons learned from this experience of turning Spaceport Cornwall into the first UK spaceport?
Start.
Yeah, I think initially it was probably just belief that we could. We were actually quite confident as a team that we had what it would take, this amazing asset that we have here at Cornwall Airport Newquay, one of the longest runways in the UK, and access over the sea, and also just the will of the team here at the airport to think, oh, wait a minute, we can turn into a spaceport. So belief, I would say, was the start, but the foundations that are already here meant that we could have probably, don't listen CA, but we could have launched it after we were potentially announced. From a facilities perspective, we have this fantastic runway and that can handle 747s, and we've done so. So turning the spaceport or the airport into the spaceport has really just been to future-proof it, a lot of it, and to grasp the opportunity from the wider space industry. So we've done things to the site like strengthen taxiways and turn pads at the end of the runway so that Cosmic Girl can maneuver a lot easier and more efficiently. And we've done things like build our space systems integration facility where the satellites are integrated into the fairing of the rocket. We never planned to build that building initially, but we had an opportunity to get a little bit of funding. And that's really exciting for us because, of course, it's being used by Virgin. It's a fantastic world-class facility. But when Virgin are not here, we can open it up to other companies. We have a brand new facility that's opening adjacent to that, which will have other space companies. It's full and we haven't even opened it yet. That's how excited people are. So we're just building on what's already here that the airport has, and we've added a few bits and pieces that will future-proof the site and make it a little bit bespoke to some parts of what Virgin required as well. But to be able to develop an airport for less than £20 million to turn it into a spaceport, I think it's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, I would say, number one, the G7 was a great proving ground for bringing in 747s. So that was convenient. Spaceport Cornwall has been a phenomenal host, first of all. So thank you.
Thanks for being here.
As far as the complexities, look, dealing with logistics, dealing with planning, coordinating timelines, and setting up, when we're doing operations with hazardous materials and making sure we have the right coordination, the right regulatory approvals. Those are the complexities. Those are the hard parts. The good thing looking ahead is we now have learned all of those. And going ahead, we've got them. There's other things like coordinating our flyouts and airspace and things like that, which is kind of similar. Those are where the complexities are. Overall, the coming here and turning a slab of cement into a spaceport went incredibly smoothly. I think within a handful of days, we were up and operating from blank cement to launch operations center. And so, it's been an incredible journey. And now we're here.
And then following up on that, Dan, could you talk a little bit more about the different launch locations and site elsewhere around the world? What's next?
Sure. We've been having discussions across the globe. The ability to come to an airport and turn a slab of cement into a spaceport is something that's very interesting and generally has never really been done before. And so there's quite a bit of interest. We have agreements that we have announced recently in Australia, in Japan. We have an agreement with Luxembourg looking across NATO needs. And so, we see a great opportunity to really change the framework for launch. Launch was traditionally done in a couple of places in the world. And regions and countries, couldn't do it. Well, with our technology and the will and the technologies within the UK and other countries where now satellite companies are all over the place, it'll be natural to have an ecosystem where there's launch and spacecraft manufacturing and operations. And I think that's the model of the future, and we're going to see that, you know, each region will want a piece of that future.
So we are going from, this is from aerospace, we are going from the UK having no sovereign space access to 7 spaceports and launchers coming online. The question, I believe this is for Ian, is without a strong anchor tenant like NASA, can the UK support all these competing spaceports, and what are your outlooks for that?
I'd say to that the space economy is not static, particularly in low Earth orbit. If you look at the number of small satellites that were launched back in 2012, I think it was something like 500 or so. If you look at the number of launches that took place last year, 2021, there was 1,700 of those were small satellites. So the market is changing rapidly. There is a strong demand for micro launches to get small satellites into low Earth orbit. So there's more than enough in terms of a demand signal for us to respond to. So certainly we don't need to rely on those large national anchor tenants such as NASA, and I think that the UK can certainly demonstrate that it can compete in the small satellite launch market for the foreseeable future. And in terms of the number of spaceports that we've got as well, then again, I think there's an opportunity for them to develop and demonstrate that if they're competitive for launch, then again they can get after what we call that addressable market as well. But I would say that having both horizontal and vertical launch capabilities are very much complementary as well. So I don't see them as a competitive capability. I see them as different capabilities, and therefore there's certainly room for vertical and horizontal launch here in the UK, in a global market that continues to grow.
Melissa, can you give us an update on ChronoSat and when you expect to launch and what the latest is for
Our lockdown baby, ChronoSat. So ChronoSat is our community satellite that we kind of came together to think about how can we engage the local community with space? How can we bring space down to Earth and down to an area like Cornwall? And we thought, what if we came up with a small satellite that could help benefit a local issue? And so ChronoSat 1 was born out of that, and at G7 we were, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the time announced funding for it, and we are designing and building and launching and tracking ChronoSat all from Cornwall for Cornwall. So it is a small communications satellite that will work with sensors around the coast of Cornwall, and it will monitor our ocean health around the coast of Cornwall. And it will do things like, one of the projects we're working with is looking at seagrass restoration off the coast of Cornwall. We're looking at monitoring the temperature, visibility, pollution levels. Our end goal is really to plant a kelp farm for carbon sequestration in the future and use it as a great case study in how we can use blue carbon to help with some of the local environmental issues here, as well as engage local schools. So the schools will be helping us, and we've run a few think tanks already that John Pavitt has run with local universities, getting the students involved in not just the design of the satellite, but also looking at how we process the data and getting the kids to help us with that as well. So ChronoSat 1 is in the process of being built, and we're hoping to launch it potentially on the second launch, if not the third, with Virgin, and very much it's just the start of a program of future satellites that we just want to get bigger and better. We've been blown away by how much interest there is in this project like this. It sounds simple, like, to create a piece of technology for the community, but to what we've seen is the excitement around, okay, we can really bring space right down to Earth by a project like this. So something we're really excited about.
Awesome. I have one more question from online, and then I'll take a couple more questions from around. People are eager to have a few more questions in. I think this one is probably best suited for Dan, but others can jump in. Why is the launch happening at night?
Well, spacecraft have their requirements, and each one has a mission. one of our spacecraft has a requirement associated with where they are at a specific point of the day, and when it crosses the equator is how it's defined. And so that defines the launch time. You know, again, the purpose of the launch is to make sure that the satellites on board, you know, have the right orbits and have the right ability to conduct their missions, and that's why we're doing it late at night.
Great. Is there anyone else in person? We'll get you a mic just a second.
Nathan Hudkin from Chaos TV and Radio. It's been quite an exciting journey to get to where we are today, and I know everyone wishes you the best of luck for tomorrow. With that in mind, what is the message to the international space community here forward from little old Newquay here in Cornwall? And if I may, with sustainability and reusability in mind, can you tell us a little bit about why VirginOrbit is such a great, viable option?
Wow, what's the message? You know, I would say, number one, you know, space has become such an incredible part of our life. From the way we communicate, to the way we navigate, to how we understand our world and the heavens beyond. But space is now coming to you, is the message. You know, one of the purposes in VirginOrbit is to open up space for everyone. And that's exactly what we're doing. In that space is not a faraway thing that somebody else does anymore. It's what communities across the world do. And you know, that's a large what our organization is about.
I think just to add to that, we're really proud of working with VirginOrbit on our sustainability because we're, I think, the first kind of partnership that's actually looked at things like our carbon impact. So being transparent about what our impact is in the first place. As Dan said, satellites are so fundamental in everyday life now, but the way they get to space currently is impacting the environment, which tends to seem quite ironic to a lot of people, and I understand that. So we want to do a better job at actually how we can get this incredible technology to space, but in a more responsible way, in a more sustainable way, in a more ethical way, and in a more transparent way. And that's why you can find out about exactly what our impact is. That's been helped by the regulations that the UK have put in place. And that we're not just going to stop there. We want to look at how we can work with VirginOrbit and other operators to bring that impact down, work towards carbon neutrality in the first instance, and in bringing things like nature-based solutions to the site, even how we're working with projects like the Eden Project, and bring people that know a lot more about sustainability than I do to kind of be our critical friends and help us on this journey. Because I truly, as an environmentalist myself, believe in the power in space to make Earth a better place, but we just need to be aware of the impact that we do have in getting the tech to space and how we can do it better.
Yeah, just maybe jumping on that a little further. I mean, you know, we have a unique method of flying to space and a real reuse in that. If you think back on all the launches that you've seen, usually you're watching the wildlife in the wildlife preserve, and then a very fierce, powerful rocket lifts off and flies to space. We're going to reuse a 747 tomorrow, a runway. We'll leave the ground in a normal way that we all fly, go out up to 35,000 feet, and the rocket will start there, a more efficient approach and a much lighter touch approach than normal. So there's environmentally, we sort of have taken a big leap with this technology. And then, of course, everything that Mel just said about, you know, we understand what's going on in our planet. We understand how to optimize our behaviors, largely because of what we understand from space.
I'd say that a Boeing 747 is probably the ultimate reusable first stage. You know, I think Falcon 9 are probably up to around about 90 times before they start to think about when they should replace it. So I would like to think about cycle time on Cosmic. It's probably up and down quite a few more times than that. And in terms of sustainability, then the UK is, of course, it's a principal driver for the United Nations long-term sustainability goals as well. So we're very, very much attuned to that, particularly through our regulatory environment. So for before you can license any satellites on space, you have to make sure that they can demonstrate they meet those sustainability values. And that's sustaining space as a domain, as well as actually looking at what it does on Earth as well. So we can protect that fragile environment as much as the one that we have within the atmosphere.
Hi, Alex Hawkins from New Scientist. The past 4 launches have all been in California, and now we're in Yuki and Post. What are the biggest changes you've had to make launching in Yuki, and have you faced any massive challenges from launching in such a different environment now?
I would say pasties versus hamburgers. It's a significant shift. From the operation of the system, it's essentially the same. Remember, we did a launch rehearsal in California before we came here, just to make sure we checked everything before we left the U.S. Certainly, the partnerships are probably the biggest differences. We're very appreciative of the partnerships that have been in place, as we mentioned. I mean, the airport logistics, the UK Space Agency, Spaceport Cornwall, the RAF, the CAA, and all of the other organizations. That's probably the biggest difference. But in terms of the technology and how we operate, a little different weather than Mojave. But otherwise, the team is turning the wrenches in the same way.
I think Stanley's been surprised at how many people are going to be showing up tomorrow to watch it, because he said in Mojave, like 2 people, maybe look through the fence, because I see it so much over there. So, big difference.
Hi, Ollie from Cornwall. I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned more launches in the future, if this one works very well. Have you got a time scale? Have you got a plan for 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 a year? Well, what's the future looking like for Cornwall here?
We would like to be back if we could before the end of the year. I'm not sure that will happen, but it's not out of the question. Certainly our focus right now is today and tomorrow. But we're in discussions right now. There's work to do across the payload community. Again, it starts with a payload. But there are a number of ideas percolating, working with UK Space Agency and the rest of the community. So, we would like to start a rhythm. I think right now we're very, very focused clearly on launch number 1.
It's very clear to me that VirginOrbit have a strong commitment to being a global operator, to bring in 2 new aircraft, 2 aircraft again into some of their existing operations in order to do that globally. And the UK very much wants to be to that, and I think that we can demonstrate that we will be, Europe's principal launch operator, particularly having done it for the first time, and then complementing that against other sites that we've got. So very much, this is not a one shot and then go away again. We need to make sure that we can work together and demonstrate that we launch the right missions and be competitive. And it's not just competitive on price, it's having the right legal framework, regulatory framework, operating in a stable democracy helps as well. So there's many, many factors here that will make the UK an attractive place for them as well.
And I think it's worth noting as well is very much VirginOrbit as our anchor tenant, but we have other operators that will be coming to use the site when Virgin are not here. And as I mentioned before, we're really developing the kind of cluster around it. VirginOrbit are quite a magnet of interest for other space companies to co-locate and to be alongside. And that's what I meant. We've filled the building already with other companies looking to move to the site. So very much when VR are launching elsewhere in the world, we'll be very active on site here. And the beauty of the airport is it's not all eggs in one basket. It's not just launched at this site. There's so many other things going on at the airport that we're just one kind of business activity here. So it means that we can develop lots of different parts of the business, and that makes it a lot more sustainable as a spaceport. Not just wholly waiting for Virgin to come and launch a VR. We have lots of other activities.
For VirginOrbit, at the beginning of 2022, there was news that you guys, first of all, were planning on reusing the first stage of Launcher 1 as well as for using the 747, and also to add a third stage, possibly powered by ion engines. Can you comment about any of those new technologies?
Sure. I mean, we've got a wonderful product, but whenever you have a technology, you are evolving it. And so, there's a lot of opportunity to flex and the performance of our system, both in terms of more payload to orbit, as well as reaching orbits like lunar or interplanetary. And so we do have a partnership with Exoterra that we announced last year, that we're developing a electric upper stage in support of some NASA activity and some other international activity that we have. I didn't the rest of the question. Reusability. And we continue to look at reusability. We have a very simple first stage. So the economics is not completely clear at closes when you get through the whole logistic life cycle there. It's not out of the cards. We haven't yet committed to reuse, but it is something in our trade space that we continue to evaluate. We've got concepts that are in development.
Charlotte Scotland from Global. Firstly, congratulations to the business people who've been working really hard. Out of the way from the launch, can you kind of paint a picture for people at home about what the atmosphere is going to be like in the control room?
Sure. I think Mel said it right, focused. You have a bubbling of excitement within, but you have to sort of put that aside. And the team right now is smiling, but their eyes are laser sharp as we're going through our checkouts and going through our communications. Space launch is a very serious business, and we'll be looking at integrating all of the information about the system, about the weather, about the range, and anticipating and supporting each other as we go through a very exciting but very rigorous process.